Welcome to the 2015 National Competitiveness Forum. We have a full, and I hope, an engaging day of conversations, presentations, and recommendations. Thank you in advance for your participation, your questions, and your comments. It is the tradition of this NCF, to be as interactive and informal as we can make it. I'm pleased to be joined on stage this morning by the Council's President and CEO, Deborah Wince-Smith, to formally release the Council's annual Clarion Call for Competitiveness. Since 2012, the Clarion Call has provided an analysis of U.S. economic health and put forth a competitiveness agenda for policymakers based on almost 3 decades of research and the insights of the nation's leading corporate executives, academic and labor leaders, and national lab directors. For 2015, the Clarion Call makes clear the interconnecting issues and trends affecting the U.S. economy. More than just strengths and weaknesses or challenges and opportunities, this year's assessment of U.S. competitiveness highlights the interactions among trends such as between educational attainment and wages, between energy abundance and trade, and between taxes and domestic investment, to name just a few. The Council report card again grades policymakers, this time on their progress over the past year on a core set of recommendations needed to grow the economy and assure broad-based prosperity. As you will soon see, the results are not good. This year, the Clarion Call also includes a set of questions for the candidates, intended to focus attention on the issues that should be part of the presidential campaigns, the debates, and eventually the party platforms. As you look through the report and its accompanying infographic, I'd like to ask Deborah to highlight some important overarching trends.
Thank you, Sam. And I would like to also welcome all of you to the 2015 National Competitiveness Forum. With the gross domestic product of $18.1 trillion, the United States remains the world's largest economy with one of the highest levels of GDP per capita. While projections for 2015 range from 2 to 3% GDP growth, the recent trend has been to revise estimates lower, increasing concern for the nation's long-term health. Nevertheless, any growth is better than no growth, and it is having positive repercussions. For example, economic growth is clearly having an impact on employment. The unemployment rate dropped over the past year from 6.2% to 5%, a number widely believed to represent full employment, though what is truly happening in the labor market remains extremely complex and uncertain, particularly when one looks at the retirement of the baby boomers and a disturbing downward trend in workforce participation. Over the past year, productivity remained at a growth rate of only 0.7%, while manufacturing productivity fared slightly better with a growth rate of about 1% year over year. And as you all know, productivity must grow over time to support higher wages and competitive companies in an advanced economy like the United States, and 0.7% is just not going to cut it. While there is good news with the budget deficits continuing to decline, the long-term outlook for the U.S. debt remains deeply troubling. Digging a little deeper behind some of these numbers reveals an economy with great potential, but standing on uncertain ground. Sam.
In the Clarion Call, the Council has pulled back the curtain on some of these top-line numbers to provide a more thorough analysis. For example, despite the positive trend in unemployment, job growth has slowed since the last year, averaging 198,000 new jobs per month compared to 260,000 per month in 2014. Perhaps most concerning is the workforce participation rate, which continues to decline and now stands at 62.4%. the lowest since the late 1970s. This trend, coupled with stagnant wages, calls into question just how full employment truly is and how critical it is for policymakers to maintain a laser-like focus on job creation, education, and skills training. Immigration and unemployment are tightly linked issues and are among the most controversial topics of the current presidential campaign. While study after study has shown the positive impact of highly skilled immigrants who benefit from the U.S. education system and are able to remain in the United States, policymakers are no closer to stamping a green card to diplomas than they were a year ago. The positive link between growth and investment is similarly well demonstrated. So one might expect that rising GDP to bring with it critical new investment in the seed corn of economic growth, basic scientific research. Yet federal R&D as a percentage of GDP is expected to dip even lower by the end of 2015 to 0.76%, down from 0.79% in 2014. Similarly, long recognized tax disincentives to investment such as saw much talk and no action over the past year. Challenges like these serve as examples of the passive attitude by too many policymakers to the nascent strength of the U.S. economy as it climbs slowly back from the recession. And we really do have tremendous opportunities if we can take advantage of them. By itself, the shift in America from energy scarcity to abundance conveys significant competitive advantage in terms of output, jobs, trade, and manufacturing. Since November 2012, the United States has been the world's largest petroleum producer, overtaking Saudi Arabia, and it has been the world's largest natural gas producer since 2011, far outstripping the former leading producer, that is Russia. This surge in supply has lowered domestic energy costs, but beyond lowering the price of a gallon of gas, it has started to attract manufacturing investment. Results are already apparent. After a decade-long skid, the manufacturing sector has added more than 869,000 jobs since 2010, outperforming job growth in other sectors of the U.S. economy. America's ability to innovate remains the envy of the world. Despite the stagnant federal investment in basic research, the United States still counts for 1/3 of all global research and development. And after declining for several years, a startup resurgence may be underway. Over 530,000 people started a business each month this year, compared to a rate of 478,000 per month last year. Perhaps most exciting is the transformation that is rooted in the democratization and self-organization of innovation, a topic we are going to hear a lot about this morning. And as demonstrated by the Council's National Digital Engineering and Manufacturing Consortium, it is now even possible to push down through the supply chain access to more powerful supercomputers, enabling cutting-edge modeling and simulation for competitive advantage. There are, however, strong headwinds to realizing this economic potential. Deborah?
With the U.S. leading the world in oil and natural gas production, oil imports are down over 35% since 2006, and the total trade deficit is down 33% from its 2006 peak. Yet in the past 18 months, the trade deficit has begun to increase, rising 6% year over year. If not for increasing services exports, the news would be worse. These numbers are dwarfed, though, by the infrastructure challenges facing the nation. While once America stood as the shining leader in modern infrastructure, the country now faces a $3 trillion in desperately needed investments to maintain, upgrade, and modernize American roads, ports, levees, bridges, inward waterways, dams, airports, and waste facilities. But this is hardly the only self-inflicted wound to America's potential. In 2014, Congress enacted 224 laws, which resulted in agencies issuing 3,554 rules. The annual regulatory compliance and the economic cost of these rules is estimated at $1.88 trillion, which equals roughly 11% of the total U.S. GDP. While increased attention to the problem has shined a light on the crushing student debt so many young people face as they try to start their careers, little has been done to effect change. The class of 2015 will graduate with an average of $35,000 in student debt, up from over just $27,000 in 2014. Access and affordability to education is not an abstract issue. In 2014, the median wage for a U.S. job that requires a post-secondary education paid almost 60% more, $57,200, than those jobs that require a high school diploma, $34,000 a year. Over twice as much as those jobs attainable with less than a high school diploma at $25,000 a year. Not all wounds are self-afflicted, however, with one of the greatest challenges to America's economic and national security coming from malicious bits and bytes, cyber attacks. Since 2005, the United States has experienced over 6,000 reported data breaches, with 855 million records exposed. Cyber attacks are costing businesses $400 to $500 billion a year, and that number does not even include the large number of cyber attacks which go unreported. Despite the urgent need, there is a dearth of cybersecurity talent, with more than 200,000 U.S. cybersecurity jobs going unfulfilled. We need a national cyber patriot corps. You have the Clarion Call in front of you. We urge you to read and disseminate it. Use the data, use the analysis, and the arguments it contains. If you hear someone say they have a silver bullet to economic growth and prosperity, wave the Clarion Call in front of them to demonstrate this is all interconnected and we must act on multiple fronts. Low-cost energy can and is enabling a manufacturing renaissance. The best and brightest must have access to research funding and infrastructure. Regulation and tax policy can incentivize investment and will enable risk-taking. Educational priorities must align with future jobs to protect America's intellectual and physical capital. These are the interconnected policy priorities that must be debated, discussed, and acted upon by all our citizens. The Council has championed these policies and continues to put them in the forefront of policymakers around the nation with the backing of our members from industry, academia, industry, and national labs. These recommendations comprise a roadmap for policymakers to follow. And yes, again, we have graded their response. Sam.
The Council graded policymakers on the progress addressing several key competitiveness policy recommendations. The 2015 grade assesses actions over the course of the past year. As you will soon see from the report and the accompanying infographic, this is not a report card you would be proud to take home. I want to highlight just a few. Despite continued broad support for high-skilled immigration reform, the polarized rhetoric surrounding immigration issues make it difficult to imagine that any action will be taken in the foreseeable future. The grade is a D for 2015, down from a C in 2014. In July 2015, President Obama issued an executive order establishing the National Strategic Computing Initiative, a coordinated research, development, and deployment strategy designed to advance core technologies solve difficult computational problems, and expand the use of high-speed computing in the public and private sectors. Coupled with previous investments in this critical technology and efforts to push it into the supply chains, the grade is an A, up from a B in 2014. At the other end of the spectrum, despite increasingly urgent calls to increase federal R&D investment, basic research was only 0.79% of GDP in 2014, a 25% decline since 2003. And that percentage is expected to shrink to 0.76% by the end of 2015. The grade is an F. I don't want to end on a down note, so I'll highlight that despite the Export-Import Bank Charter expiring in July 2015, recent congressional efforts to try to reauthorize it are pending, and the measure appears to have the necessary votes to pass. The grade here is a C, up from a D in 2014. The full report card is included in the Clarion Call. The last section of the 2015 Clarion Call is the questions for candidates. Please review and share these with your contacts in the campaigns. The Council will be working to integrate them into conversation over the next several months. But you can help highlight the importance of bringing these competitiveness issues to the public discourse. I'm pleased to turn it back to Deborah for the final word.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for the leadership of the Council on Competitiveness. The Council's members are completely committed to putting forth a pro-growth agenda to enhance American competitiveness and to promoting that policy agenda across our country with our federal leaders in states, in capitals, in cities, and regions across America. The Clarion Call stands as an important guidepost. It is an actionable roadmap for a sustainable path forward for America. We ask again, everyone here with us today, we urge your participation to have you and your colleagues join us in this urgent mission to make America more competitive, Americans more prosperous. It is now the pleasure of the Council on Competitiveness to formally release the 2015 Clarion Call, and Sam and I would like to ask the members of the board and the executive committee to join us on stage for a photo of this constellation of leaders committed to working together for America's future. Thank you.